Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. What we're about to look at in this video is something that, as far as I know, no one else is talking about. It's based on the original non-biased research that I've been doing for years into these ancient texts. And I'm about to show you that the first four seals have already been opened, and the next seal to open is the escape, otherwise known as the harpazo or the rapture. So, this is the King James Version of the book of Revelation on BibleGateway.com, and the seven seals start in Revelation 6. So, the first seal is a white horse. It says, "And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer." So, the first seal is the white horse that goes forth conquering. And in Vatican City, by St. Peter's Basilica, there is this marble sculpture of a white horse called the Vision of Constantine. And it represents a vision that the founder of the Christian Roman Empire had prior to the battle that he won at Milvian Bridge. So in the year 312 of our current era, the Roman Emperor Constantine was competing against the Emperor Maxentius for dominance of Rome. And the night before their battle at Milvian Bridge, Constantine had this dream wherein he was told to mark the shields of his soldiers with the first two letters of the Greek word Christ, which looks similar to what we now know as the Christian cross. It looks something like this. And he was told in that dream, with this sign you will conquer. So this is when the Christian cross was adopted as the sign of war. So his soldiers carried this sign for the first time when they slaughtered and drowned Maxentius's infantry. And then Constantine entered Rome on October 29, 312. But notice this date, October 29th, is the same date that Hurricane Sandy hit New York City in 2012. So this all ties in together because this event right here seems to have been foretold in the book of Genesis, and New York City ties in with all the other events that happen in Daniel 9. So for more information on that, you can check out the links in the description below. Specifically, this one is called Noah's Flood Timeline 2001 through 2014. But this event here in 312 represented the beginning of the Christian Roman Empire, or that religious system, that powerful religious empire. And Jesus predicted that this would happen way back here prior to the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70 AD. So in Matthew 24, the disciples asked him, okay, when is this destruction of the temple going to happen? And the first thing he said to them is, many would come in the name of Christ, deceiving people. So when we look at the book of Daniel, we find out this Roman Empire was the fourth beast described in Daniel 7, which was founded by the adversary. So for more information on that, you can look at the link below this video called The Dragon, the Beast, and the Harem. So this extremely powerful religious empire began with Constantine, and specifically at that moment when he had that dream and started using the Christian cross as his symbol for conquering. So that began in 312 and it ended in 1870 when all the territory of the papal government. So in 1870, this Roman Empire had transformed into the Holy Roman Empire. And the Roman Catholic Church, of course, was the power of that Holy Roman Empire. And in 1870, all their territory was taken away and the Pope was taken prisoner. So this white marble horse of Constantine that's in the Vatican represents the start of that religious empire, that literally beastly religious empire that murdered millions of innocents in the name of Christ. And there are many popes who have admitted to this. So it's not something that's not something that is a secret. It's pretty much common knowledge. So the first seal of the white horse conqueror was opened at that time in 312. Then next it says, and when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. So the second seal is the red horse that takes peace from the earth. It's the red horse of war, basically. So there are some very interesting events that took place after the wound of 1870 right here. Most specifically, World War I that started in 1914, and then World War II that followed shortly after that. So the first worldwide wars began just 44 years after the wound of the Roman Empire. And you'll see the next horse ties right along with this series of events. It says, and when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. So a pair of balances or scales he was holding in his hand. And I heard the voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. So the black horse holds the balances or the scales, a measure of wheat for a penny. So it has something to do with money. The black horse that comes next has something to do with the global financial system. Okay, so look at this. On October 29th, again that date, October 29th, 1929, the stock market crashed, bringing in a severe worldwide economic depression. So there's that date, October 29th again, and look at the year, 1929. That's the same year the nation of Vatican City was established, right here, and the papal power of the Roman Empire was restored. So the wound of the beast occurred here in 1870, and the Pope was held prisoner from 1870 until 1929, and its sovereign governmental power was restored in Italy in 1929. So from 754, right here, which is really when the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, had its start, until the wound in 1870, right here, and the healing of that wound in 1929. So that is Revelation 13, that talks about that wound of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, which Daniel tells us is the Roman Empire. So Revelation 13:3 says, "And I saw one of his heads," that's the Roman Empire it's talking about there. That's the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. "And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast." So also notice 2014 is the 1260th year since that donation of Pepin in 754 that gave the Holy Roman Empire its start. So at the same time the wound of the beast was healed, there was a worldwide economic depression. But that's not the only thing in terms of the global economy that was beginning at that time. The same year World War II ended, the United Nations was established. And we know, if you've watched the other videos, we know that the United Nations is the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. It's the current incarnation of that beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, and probably the final incarnation of that. So there are links below that go into that in more detail. But you might think that the United Nations was established to maintain peace after that World War, but it was actually founded on its involvement with the world economy. So just 1 year before the UN was formally established, it held the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference, also known as the Bretton Woods Conference, which established the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, at that time, along with the IBRD, which is part of the World Bank. And Wiki gives a rundown of the history of the global financial system, which is what I think this black horse holding the scales truly represents. The scales represent the global financial system that is controlled by the beast. So I'm sure you've heard of the Federal Reserve Act. It was enacted in December of 1913, just 6 months before the start of World War I. And just 1 month after the start of World War I, in August 1914, Germany was the first nation to abandon the gold standard. So prior to that, all money was backed by an actual commodity. It was backed by gold. But in 1914, it started moving away from that. And in 1945, the UN, i.e. the Bretton Woods Financial Order, established a system wherein countries would peg their exchange rates to the US dollar instead of gold. And then the US dollar supposedly would be convertible to gold. So during this time period, they were slowly moving the financial system away from actual commodities to paper, the US dollar. Then in 1969, the IMF made its first amendment to the Articles of Agreement and developed special drawing rights, which were meant to represent a specified amount of gold, but were not directly redeemable for gold. And then in 1971, 8 years after President Kennedy was assassinated, President Nixon suspended the exchange of US dollars for gold altogether. So this was known as the Nixon shock. So, this rider of the black horse holding the scales, this global financial system, it all ties into the beast, which we know was the Holy Roman Empire previously and is now the United Nations. Again, this is explained in the video link below called The Dragon, the Beast, and the Harem. So, the beast system gradually took our physical commodities and left us paper. So at this point, our money is dust in the wind. That's why I've said if you do have numbers, quote unquote, in their system, I would use it to buy a farm, because food is going to be the most important commodity when this thing crashes. And all the experts know it's going to crash. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Okay, so now for the fourth horse of the apocalypse. It says, "And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth." So this fourth seal is the pale horse of death by war and hunger in the fourth part of the earth. So not the whole earth, just the fourth part. So if we split up the earth into four sections, you can see here's the North Pole right here, here's Alaska, Canada, and the US, covering this fourth section right here. So North and South America makes up 1/4 of the earth. Then this next section spans from here to here, which is the whole Pacific Ocean right here. So this next fourth part of the earth is the Pacific Ocean. Then we have Russia covering this whole next fourth right here. And under that, we also have Asia and Australia down here, and India. And finally, this fourth section of the earth is Europe up here in the north, and the entire continent of Africa, and also the Middle East right here. So this death by war and hunger in the fourth part of the earth is currently happening in the Middle East and Africa right now. So we all know about the wars in the Middle East, especially the conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians that began when the United Nations established the State of Israel in 1947. And then we also know about the Six-Day War in 1967, when Israel launched a strike against Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. But during this same time period, Africa was suffering from famine after famine. So Malawi in 1949, Nigeria in 1967, Ethiopia and Uganda in the 70s and 80s, and Somalia in the 90s. Then Niger in 2005, Sahel in 2010 and 2012, and East Africa in 2011. So the pale horse of death by war and hunger in the fourth part of the earth is happening right now in the Middle East and Africa. So we are currently living in the fourth seal right now, the time of the pale horse of death for 1/4 of the earth. So the four horsemen of the apocalypse are already marching through. We're in the midst of it right now. We're right here. Okay, so what's next? It says, "And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth?" So they're crying out for the people on the earth at this time in the fifth seal. They're under the altar in heaven, and they're crying out for the people on the earth. And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. So the next seal to be opened is the escape. It's the rest for a little season, when the multitude is given white robes in the heavenly temple. So this is the escape that we've talked about. There's also a video linked below called "The Escape from the Serpent," which goes into detail about that. And the escape that we talk about on my channel is not based on religious doctrine. It's based solely on the texts themselves. So it's very different from that standard doctrine. And I haven't found this information anywhere else. So the escape, the escape occurs when the fifth seal is opened, and we are in the fourth seal right now. So that escape is the next event on the timeline. And what happens after the escape of the fifth seal is, "And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood." So in the sixth seal, there's an earthquake, and the sun goes dark, and the moon turns red, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth. So right here, the stars fall to earth on the sixth seal. "For the great day of his wrath is come." Okay, so the sixth seal is the day of wrath. And the day of wrath is also known as the day of the Lord. So the day of the Lord is darkness and not light. The great day of the Lord, that day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, of wasteness and desolation, darkness and gloominess, clouds and thick darkness, a day of the trumpet against the high towers. The day of the Lord's wrath, the whole land shall be devoured by the fire. The day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. The heavens shall pass away with a great noise. The elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth shall be burned up. So that great burning that it talks about over and over, that's the day of wrath. That's the day of the Lord. So the day of the Lord comes as a thief in the night, when they shall say, Peace and safety. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. So let us watch, let us put on the breastplate of faith and love and hope, the helmet of hope. The hope of that salvation, that escape, that rescue, because God did not appoint us to wrath. So this is confirming that that escape happens before the wrath. And this again, gather yourselves together before the day of the Lord. It may be that you shall be hid in the day of the Lord. So not going through the wrath, not going through the day of the Lord's anger. Gather yourselves together. Escape. And then here in Joel 2, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the day of the Lord. But in Joel 2, this word translated as before is different from Zephaniah. So in Zephaniah, the word is 3808. 3808 right here, which means not, no, or before. But in Joel 2:31, the word is 6440. 6440 right here, which also means in the face of or in the presence of. So the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood in the face of the day of the Lord, in the presence of the day of the Lord. So basically, at the time of the day of Lord, in the day of wrath, right here, it's confirmation for us because we know Revelation is telling us that as well. It's saying, at the sixth seal, at the day of wrath, the sun will go dark and the moon will turn red. Joel is confirming that. It's saying the sun will be dark and the moon will be turned red in the face of the day of the Lord. So it's confirmation right there. In the face of that, at that time. So this sixth seal is when the sun turns dark and the moon turns red and the meteorites hit. So there's another video linked below called Asteroid When and Where, if you want more information on that, because that's what the book of Revelation is describing. But notice this occurs after the multitude are taken to the heavenly temple and given their white robes. It occurs after that. But when we go on reading in Revelation 7, however, it says, after these things, meaning after the things right here that occurred in chapter 6, the day of the wrath. After these things, the four angels sealed the 144,000. So that can seem contradictory at first, because the texts have already confirmed for us that the escape occurs before the wrath, and the 144,000 are sealed prior to the apocalyptic event. But once we actually look at the meaning of this word, it makes more sense. This word translated as after in Revelation 7 is Strong's 3326. 3326, the word meta, which actually means with. It means with 345 times in the Bible, and it means after only 88 times. So it's translated as with far more often than it's translated as after. So Revelation 7 is saying, and meta, or and with these things, the 144,000 were sealed. So with these things, meaning at the time of the sixth seal, with these things that are occurring in the sixth seal, at the time of the wrath, the 144,000 are sealed on the earth. That's what Revelation is saying. Revelation 7 is saying. Then in verse 9, it uses this word again, right here, after. It's translated as after, but again, it's 3326, which means with, more often than it means after. So again, Revelation 7 verse 9 is saying, with this, meaning with the sealing of the 144,000 on the earth, he saw a great multitude of all nations standing before the throne, clothed with white robes. So the multitude are in heaven. They're already in heaven at the time the 144,000 are sealed on the earth. The multitude that have the white robes right here, they're given these white robes in the fifth seal. And by the time the day of wrath happens, they are already in heaven. So in seal 5, they are given their white robes. Then the wrath occurs in seal 6, and the 144,000 are sealed on the earth to protect them from this apocalyptic event that's going to happen at that time. So he's not saying that they went to heaven after the wrath. He's saying they're already there at the time of the sixth seal with these things. At the time of the sixth seal, the multitude is at the throne in heaven. These are they which came away from great tribulation. So this word right here, out of, number 1537. 1537, it also means away from. So this multitude is those who came away from the great tribulation. So they escape here when the fifth seal is opened, and they're in heaven at the altar during the wrath, and they're crying out for those on the earth at that time. During that wrath, they're crying out for those on the earth. So that's the sixth seal. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. So the seventh seal here is silence for half an hour. That's the first thing. And then it says, and there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. So right here, voices, thunder, lightning, and earthquake. And the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. So the seven trumpets are going to sound at the time of the seventh seal. So right here, the seven trumpets sound when the seventh seal is opened. But remember that the earthquake right here in the sixth seal, this is happening at the time of the sixth seal. This great earthquake is happening at the time of the sixth seal. But it's also occurring in the seventh seal right here. So these two seals, the sixth and the seventh seal, seem to be happening simultaneously. And we've already seen how this can be back here with the second and third seals, because these two also happened around at the same time. It was simultaneous. They were happening right in harmony with each other. So these seals can be visualized as the Fibonacci sequence, with the first seal taking up the majority of the time, and then the sixth and seventh seal happening almost simultaneous down here. So something like this here, with the 1 and the 1 at the end. But I'm not saying this is the Fibonacci sequence that's playing out. I'm simply saying that it can be visualized in this way. But like I said, we know the second and the third seal also happened almost simultaneously as well. So, but the important point is that the texts make it very clear And we'll talk about this more when we go into the seven trumpets, but it's very clear that the sixth and the seventh seal are happening at the same time. And then the other thing I want to point out is notice the first four seals are the four horsemen, known as the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And that leaves three remaining seals. So, what does this remind you of? It reminds me of the seven appointed times of the year. The first four appointed times were fulfilled at the time of Jesus, and the final three have not yet been fulfilled. So I have a video on the appointed times also linked below. It's called Ancient Calendar. But what most people are unaware of is the appointed sign of trumpets actually occurred in 2012. And I have a video linked below on that as well. It's called Revelation 12 sign fulfilled in 2012. And this sign that happened in 2012, it precedes the escape of the multitude. So this sign that occurred in 2012, it precedes that escape, which we know is coming up right here. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I wanted to point that out. So the woman, the great multitude of all nations who are fed by the Lamb in the place prepared by God for 1260 days, are walking the holy city, which is in heaven, right here, for 42 months, which is 1260 days. So that time period that the multitude is in the resting place for yet a little season. Remember, it said rest for a little season. That's the 1260 days. And that 1260 days is also the time of the tribulation, right here. The great tribulation in Matthew 24, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time. Again in Daniel, the time of tribulation, such as there never was. Even and then it says, how long shall it be till the end of this tribulation? And he says, it shall be for a time, times and half a time. Then in Revelation 12, it tells us this time, times and half a time is the time the woman spends in the wilderness. And then later it says the woman is in the wilderness for 1260 days. So that time, times and half a time is 1260 days. That's the tribulation. It clarifies that for us right there. And so again, that's explained in more detail in the videos that are linked below in the description. So we are currently in the fourth seal right here. And this fifth seal is about to be opened. The escape before the final tribulation. So this is where we are right now, on seal 4, right before the escape. And this is the history of the dragon and its beast system as the text describe it. So again, for more information on this right here, you can check the link below called The Dragon, the Beast, and the Harem. So I hope this has been beneficial for you, and if it has, I hope you'll consider supporting this enormous amount of work by either purchasing the $5 ebook or donating on indigoflower.net. I'm a single mother, and I'm doing this completely on my own, working 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. So I want to thank every one of you who have been supportive of this, everyone who is benefiting from this information also owe their gratitude to you, because I truly would not be able to provide this information without your help. I really would not be able to do this. And absolutely no one else is talking about this. So, for those of you that are offering support, you are literally making the release of this revelation, this revealing of the truth. You are making this possible. So, no amount of thanks is enough. So, for more information on this, I recommend checking out the playlist that I created on my main channel page. It's called Bible Prophecy Fulfilled and What is Next. And you'll find some of the most important and concise information in those videos that I've compiled in that playlist. Also, like I said, there are many links in the description below this video as well, so you can check those out. And stay tuned for the next video when we go into the 7 trumpets. So I hope you all are doing well, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.